Before we dive in, let me know in the comments, do you trust this Browns front office heading into the season? Or are you starting to have doubts? By the end of this video, you'll probably feel much more strongly one way or the other. Make sure you subscribe to Gridiron Ground. We're still a brand new channel chasing our first 1,000 subscribers, and having you join us right now would truly mean a lot. Let's get into it. The Cleveland Browns just made two moves that most fans aren't connecting, but together they could reveal exactly where this franchise is headed. One has ESPN analysts questioning whether Andrew Barry made a costly mistake. The other barely made headlines, yet it could have a bigger impact on the Browns' future than people realize. And when you look at both decisions side by side, a much clearer picture starts to emerge. This isn't about defending the front office or tearing it down. It's about separating the headlines from reality and asking one simple question: are the Browns building a legitimate contender, or are they making moves that will come back to haunt them? Today, we're breaking down the Titus Howard trade, why it's become one of the most debated decisions of the offseason, what the critics are saying, and whether the concerns are actually justified. Then we'll examine Barry-Grigson's return to Cleveland and why his third stint with the organization could signal something much bigger behind the scenes.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
Section 1. Setting the scene. A roster that looks nothing like it did 12 months ago. Before we get into either of these specific moves, you need to understand the environment the Browns front office is operating in right now. Because without that context, both of these decisions look like isolated choices made in a vacuum. They're not. They're pieces of a much larger puzzle, and the puzzle itself is one of the most complicated roster situations this franchise has faced in years. Todd Monken is walking into his first training camp as the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. That alone would generate enormous pressure under any circumstances. New head coaches always face scrutiny. Every decision gets magnified. Every depth chart choice gets analyzed. Every practice rep gets interpreted as a signal of something bigger. But Monken isn't just inheriting a normal roster in transition. He's inheriting a team that has been fundamentally reshaped from top to bottom, and the sheer scale of the changes that have happened since last season ended is genuinely staggering when you lay them all out at once. Start with the most painful one. Myles Garrett was traded to the Los Angeles Rams. Read that sentence again if you need to, because it still doesn't feel fully real for a lot of people in this fan base. Myles Garrett wasn't just the best player on this team, he was the identity of this franchise. He was the one player you could point to on any given Sunday, in any given moment, and feel a genuine sense of confidence. He was the anchor of the defense, the face of the organization, the guy whose jersey you saw everywhere on game day in Cleveland. And now, he's gone, traded, wearing a different uniform, and the ripple effect of losing a player of that magnitude touches every part of the organization, not just the defensive depth chart. But here's what sometimes gets lost in the Myles Garrett conversation. The offensive side of this roster has been overhauled just as dramatically. Cleveland is entering 2025 expecting to have 5 new starters along the offensive line. Not 1, not 2, 5. That's not a rotation tweak. That's not addressing a weak spot. That's rebuilding the entire front wall of your offense essentially from the ground up. And when you consider that the offensive line is arguably the most important unit on any football team, the group that determines whether your quarterback survives, whether your run game functions, whether your offense can actually execute what the coaches draw up, the magnitude of what Cleveland is attempting becomes very clear, very quickly. New head coach, 5 new offensive line starters, no Myles Garrett, a quarterback situation that still carries significant uncertainty, a fan base that has been through enough heartbreak to be genuinely cautious about getting excited too soon. That's the environment Andrew Barry is navigating right now, and every single personnel decision he makes is being evaluated through that lens. Which brings us to the first move that's generated real debate, and the ESPN analyst who put Cleveland directly in his crosshairs.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
Section 2. The Titus Howard trade. Breaking down the move, ESPN publicly criticized. Back in March, before the draft, before the bulk of free agency had settled, Andrew Barry made the very first significant move of Cleveland's offensive line rebuild. He contacted the Houston Texans and worked out a deal, a fifth-round draft pick heading to Houston in exchange for veteran right tackle Titus Howard. At the time, the reaction from most Browns fans was cautiously optimistic. An experienced starter coming in to anchor one of the most important positions on the field. Not a blockbuster name, but a known commodity with years of NFL experience. It felt like a reasonable opening move in what everyone knew was going to be an extensive rebuild process. Then Seth Walder weighed in, and the conversation shifted. Walder is an analyst at ESPN, and he recently went through every team's offseason decisions, looking for the best and worst moves made across the league. When he landed on Cleveland, he found things he liked and things he didn't. On the positive side, he specifically called out the signing of Elgton Jenkins as a very good move, citing Jenkins' experience and his ability to play multiple positions along the offensive line. That versatility is genuinely valuable, and Walder acknowledged it clearly. But when he got to the Titus Howard trade, the tone changed. Walder's criticism wasn't vague or general. He went directly to the performance data from Howard's 2024 season in Houston, and the numbers he cited paint a specific picture. Howard's pass block win rate last season ranked in just the 24th percentile across the entire NFL. His run block win rate was actually lower, sitting at the 30th honest percentile. For anyone not familiar with how these metrics work, pass block win rate measures how often an offensive lineman successfully blocks his assignment within a defined time frame on passing plays. Run block win rate does the same for rushing plays. Both metrics are widely used as reliable indicators of offensive line performance. And Howard's numbers in both categories put him firmly in the bottom third of starting tackles in the league. Walder's argument is straightforward. If you're going to trade draft capital and pay a player starting tackle money, you should be getting someone whose recent production justifies that investment. Based on Howard's 2024 performance metrics, Walder doesn't believe that investment was justified. And when you look purely at those numbers in isolation, that's a completely reasonable position to take. The question is whether those numbers tell the complete story. Because there's another side to this argument. One that requires looking at the broader context of why Cleveland made this move, what they were actually trying to solve, and whether the expectations being placed on Howard are even fair given the role he's been brought in to fill. And that counter-argument is worth hearing in full before drawing any conclusions about whether Barry got this one right or wrong. Section 3. Why the critics might be missing the point entirely. Let's be honest about something right away. Nobody inside the Cleveland Browns organization is pretending that Titus Howard just came off the best season of his career. The performance numbers from Houston last year are what they are, and there's no spin that changes them. The 24th percentile in pass blocking and the 30th honest percentile in run blocking are not elite numbers. They're not even average numbers by strict analytical standards. Walder's criticism lands because it's grounded in real data, and dismissing it entirely would be intellectually dishonest. But here's where the analysis gets more nuanced, and where the pure numbers-based critique starts missing some important context. Titus Howard has been a starting offensive tackle in the NFL for 7 seasons. 7. He has lined up against elite pass rushers week after week across multiple teams and multiple systems. He has played both tackle spots during his career, demonstrating enough versatility to handle different assignments depending on what a coaching staff needs from him. He has 115 NFL starts to his name. That's not a backup. That's not a project. That's a player who has proven over a long period of time that he can function at this level, even when individual seasons haven't been his strongest. Now here's the number that actually matters most when you're trying to understand why Cleveland made this move. Last season, Browns quarterbacks were sacked 51 times, 51 sacks in a single season. That number is not just bad, it's genuinely unsustainable for any offense trying to build something functional. When your quarterback is hitting the turf that often, you can't develop a rhythm. You can't execute your game plan consistently. You can't ask a signal caller to grow and improve when he's running for his life on a weekly basis. The offensive line situation in Cleveland last year wasn't a weakness, it was a crisis. So what was Andrew Barry actually looking for when he went shopping for help along the offensive line? Not a Pro Bowl performer. not someone who was going to revolutionize the position and immediately turn Cleveland into a top 5 blocking unit. He was looking for stability. Functional, reliable, show up every week stability. Because when your baseline is 51 sacks in a season, even a genuine improvement to average represents a massive upgrade in quality of life for your entire offense. There's also the cost element, which deserves real attention. Barry gave up a 5th-round pick to acquire Howard. In a draft class that many evaluators around the league described as weaker than usual, the realistic odds of landing an immediate starting caliber right tackle in the 5th round were already quite low. The value proposition shifts significantly when you frame it that way. Instead of a late-round developmental gamble, Cleveland got 115 NFL starts worth of experience at one of the most critical positions on the field. That's a trade-off that makes more sense than the criticism gives it credit for, especially when you factor in one more piece of this puzzle that most people analyzing this move have completely overlooked. Section 4. The Austin Barber Factor, the piece that changes everything. There's one element of this entire Titus Howard discussion that keeps getting glossed over in the coverage, and it fundamentally changes how you should be interpreting this move. It doesn't make the criticism disappear entirely, but it does reframe the purpose of the Howard signing in a way that makes the front office's thinking a lot clearer. The Browns drafted offensive lineman Austin Barber this offseason, and depending on who you talk to inside that organization, or who you listen to among the beat reporters covering this team closely, Barber is already being viewed as a potential long-term answer at the tackle position. Now, that's not a certainty. Rookies don't come with guarantees, and projecting any first-year player into a starting role requires a lot of things to break right. Development takes time. Learning an NFL system takes time. Building the physical and mental tools to handle elite pass rushers week after week takes time. None of that happens overnight. But if Cleveland genuinely believes Barber has the ceiling to become their franchise tackle, and the fact that they used a draft pick on him suggests they believe exactly that, then the entire job description for Titus Howard changes completely. Howard isn't being asked to be the future of this offensive line. He's being asked to be the bridge, to hold the position stable, keep the sack numbers manageable, and give the offense enough functional protection while Barber learns the game at the professional level and grows into a larger role. That's a very different standard to hold Howard against. Bridge tackles don't need to make the Pro Bowl. They don't need to win every rep against elite edge rushers. They need to show up consistently, compete at a professional level, and give the team enough stability at the position to function without the crisis mode that defined last season. If Howard does that, even imperfectly, then the Barber development timeline has real breathing room, and the long-term plan along the offensive line has a genuine chance to work. Think about the 2-year picture here. If Austin Barber develops into a quality starter by 2026 or 2027, and Titus Howard bridges the gap successfully in the meantime, people are going to look back at this trade very differently than they do right now, sitting in June. Seth Walder is evaluating Howard based on his 2024 production numbers in Houston, which is the correct analytical approach in the short term. But Andrew Barry might be evaluating this move based on what the Browns' offensive line looks like 3 seasons from now. Those are fundamentally different timelines, and right now, only one of them has the complete context needed to make a fully informed judgment. The entire discussion about this trade ultimately comes down to one question. Can this offensive line protect the quarterback better than it did last year? Because if the answer to that question is yes, even partially, even imperfectly, the debate about Howard's percentile rankings stops mattering very quickly to anyone watching on Sundays in Cleveland. But while that debate continues on one side of the building, something else was happening on the other side that deserves equal attention. Section 5. A familiar face returns. Barry-Grigson is back in Cleveland. For the 3rd time, the Browns made their front office announcements quietly, almost as if they expected both moves to pass without generating much reaction. The first one was clean and straightforward. Chris Cooper, who has spent 13 seasons inside this organization, was promoted to Senior Vice President of Football Administration. He'd been serving as Vice President of Football Administration for the past 7 years. And this promotion reflects the kind of institutional trust that only builds through more than a decade of consistent, reliable work behind the scenes. Cooper is exactly the kind of organizational backbone that most fans never see but every successful franchise needs. Someone who understands how the building operates, what the culture expects, and how to keep the administrative side of an NFL front office running smoothly through significant transition. His elevation makes complete sense, and it signals that the Browns value continuity in their support structure, even as everything else around them changes. But the second announcement is the one that made people stop and read the headline twice. Barry-Grigson is back in Cleveland. He's returning to the organization as Senior Football Advisor, and this officially marks his third stint with the Browns. His third. For a franchise that has cycled through significant front office turnover over the years, the fact that one person keeps finding his way back to the same building is genuinely interesting, and it raises a real question about what specifically this organization sees in him that keeps bringing him back through the door. Most NFL fans who followed the league through the 2010s know Grigson primarily through his work as general manager of the Indianapolis Colts, where he ran the front office from 2012 through 2016. He arrived in Indianapolis at one of the most complicated and emotionally charged moments in that franchise's history. Peyton Manning, the face of the Colts for over a decade, had just departed. The city was processing that loss. The fan base was uncertain, and the organization needed someone to step in and chart the next chapter. What happened next required an enormous amount of good fortune, but it also required someone in the chair willing to make the call. Grigson selected Andrew Luck with the first overall pick in the 2012 NFL Draft. In retrospect, that pick looks like one of the most obvious decisions any general manager has ever been handed. Luck was a generational quarterback prospect, and virtually everyone in and around the NFL agreed that he was the clear choice at number one. But obvious decisions still have to be executed correctly, and Grigson made it without hesitation. That same draft also produced T.Y. Hilton in the fourth round, which turned out to be one of the more impressive value picks of the entire class. Hilton became a legitimate weapon in the Indianapolis offense for years, and finding a player of that caliber that late in the draft is not something that happens by accident. Those are two real wins, and they deserve acknowledgement. But Grigson's time in Indianapolis also had another side to it, and understanding the full picture requires looking at that honestly. Section 6. The Grigson File, the full story behind the man coming back to Cleveland. Barry-Grigson's tenure in Indianapolis was not a clean success story, and presenting it as one would be doing a disservice to anyone trying to genuinely understand what he brings and what his limitations have been throughout his career. The Andrew Luck pick carried the early years of his time with the Colts. There's really no other way to say it. When you have a generational quarterback playing at a high level, it covers a significant number of organizational flaws, and Grigson's roster construction decisions during those years had real flaws worth examining. His first-round draft selections beyond luck told a more complicated story. Bjorn Werner, selected in the first round, never developed into the impact player the Colts needed him to be. Philip Dorsett, another first-round pick, similarly failed to produce at the level his draft position suggested he was capable of. Second-round selection, Jack Mewhort showed promise at times, but couldn't sustain the kind of consistent performance that justified the investment of that draft capital. Beyond the draft, Grigson's free agency record in Indianapolis included several significant signings that failed to deliver the value the team needed. The Colts made moves in the market that looked reasonable on paper but didn't translate to production on the field, and over the course of multiple seasons, those missed investments started adding up in ways that damaged the roster's overall depth and flexibility. By the time the 2016 season concluded, the Colts had seen enough and Grigson was let go. But here's what's important to understand about what came next. Despite the mixed record in Indianapolis, Grigson didn't disappear from the NFL landscape. He continued working in front offices at a high level, which tells you that the league still saw value in what he brings to an organization even after his stint as a head decision-maker ended. He spent time with the Minnesota Vikings, eventually reaching the position of assistant general manager, a significant role that requires trust from the people running the organization. You don't get handed that title based on reputation alone. You earn it through the quality of your work inside the building. And before any of that, before Minnesota, before anything that came after Indianapolis, Grigson had already been to Cleveland twice. He served as senior personnel executive with the Browns in 2017, getting his first look at the organization from the inside. Then he returned in 2020 and 2021, this time serving as senior football advisor, the exact same title he's carrying now as he walks back through the door for the third time. That pattern of returning is worth paying attention to. Organizations don't keep bringing the same person back unless that person is consistently delivering something of value when he's there. The question is what specifically that value looks like in practice. And the answer to that question lives almost entirely in the relationship between Grigson and the man currently running the Browns front office. Section 7. The Barry-Grigson connection. Why this relationship is the real story. Everything about Ryan Grigson's return to Cleveland makes more sense the moment you understand the professional history between him and Andrew Barry. Because this isn't a front office bringing in an outside voice to provide a fresh perspective from someone who sees things differently. This is a general manager pulling a trusted colleague back into his orbit at one of the most pressure-filled moments of his career. And that distinction matters enormously when you're trying to understand what Grigson's actual role will be inside that building. When Ryan Grigson was running the Indianapolis Colts front office from 2012 through 2015, Andrew Barry was working directly under him as the team's pro scouting coordinator. That's a critical role inside any NFL front office. Pro scouting coordinators are responsible for evaluating players on existing NFL rosters across the league, identifying trade targets, tracking players who might become available through waivers or cuts, and helping the general manager build a comprehensive picture of the available talent at any given moment. It's a job that requires a sharp eye, strong organizational instincts, and constant communication with the people making decisions at the top of the front office hierarchy. Barry did that job for 4 years inside Grigson's operation. He sat in the same rooms where roster decisions were being debated. He watched how Grigson approached personnel problems, how he structured his evaluations, how he communicated with coaches about what the roster needed, and how he navigated the complex process of building a competitive NFL team under significant public and organizational pressure. That's not just professional experience. That's a formative education in how to run an NFL front office, delivered by the person now being brought back as an advisor. So when Barry decided he wanted Grigson back in Cleveland, he wasn't making a speculative bet on someone whose work ethic or judgment he wasn't sure about. He was making a deliberate, informed decision to bring a person he has known professionally for over a decade back into a building where they've already worked together successfully before. The trust between them is established. The communication style is familiar. There's no adjustment period, no honeymoon phase where two people are figuring out how to work together effectively. They already know. Now consider what Barry is facing right now. He's managing the aftermath of the Myles Garrett trade while trying to maintain defensive competitiveness. He's overseeing the most significant offensive line overhaul this franchise has attempted in years. He's working with a new head coach who is running his first training camp. He's navigating enormous uncertainty at the quarterback position while trying to build a roster that can compete in the present and develop talent for the future simultaneously. That's a genuinely enormous amount of complexity for any front office to handle at once. Having an experienced NFL executive in the building who he trusts completely, who understands how he thinks, and who has operated at a high level in multiple front office environments, including the head decision-making role of a general manager, is a real advantage. It might not show up in a box score. It might not generate a headline that gets shared across social media, but inside that building, in the meetings where the real decisions get made, that presence matters in ways that are very difficult to quantify from the outside. Section 8. The bigger picture, what both moves are actually telling you about this franchise. When you zoom out and look at both of today's stories together, not as isolated moves, not as individual headlines, but as connected pieces of a deliberate organizational strategy, one message comes through louder than anything else. The Cleveland Browns are trying to build stability. Real, sustained, structural stability. And if you've been watching this franchise long enough, you know exactly how rare that has been and exactly how much it matters when you're trying to compete consistently in the NFL. On the field, the Titus Howard trade represents a very specific kind of bet. It's not a flashy signing. It's not the kind of move that makes your fan base feel electric heading into the summer. It won't generate jersey sales or pack the stadium with extra enthusiasm on opening day. What it's designed to do is solve a problem that almost broke this offense last season, and solve it in a way that also leaves room for a longer-term developmental plan to unfold alongside it. 51 sacks is not a sustainable number for any offense trying to find its identity. Howard is the attempt to bring that number down to something survivable, while Austin Barber develops into the player the organization believes he can become. That plan might work perfectly. It might fall short, but the logic behind it is sound, and the cost of attempting it, a fifth-round pick in a weaker draft class, was not excessive given what Cleveland was trying to accomplish. Off the field, Barry-Grigson's return signals something equally important. Andrew Barry is not trying to operate in isolation during one of the most consequential stretches of his tenure as general manager. He's building a support structure around himself, deliberately and thoughtfully. He's pulling in someone he trusts at a deep level, someone who has operated at the highest levels of NFL front office decision-making, to provide another experienced perspective as the Browns navigate the enormous complexity of this particular moment in franchise history. Neither of these moves is a guarantee of anything. Titus Howard might struggle again. Grigson's influence might never produce anything clearly visible to the outside world. These are real possibilities, and being honest about uncertainty is part of what makes this kind of analysis actually useful instead of just promotional. But here's the thing about this franchise, and this moment specifically. For years, the Browns made moves that generated enormous excitement and almost no sustainable results. Splashy acquisitions that fell apart, big swings that missed badly, decisions that looked bold in the press release and disastrous 6 months later. What this offseason looks like, at least from the outside looking in, is something different. It looks more patient, more calculated, more focused on building a foundation that can actually support long-term success rather than chasing the next quick fix. That approach is harder to celebrate in June. It doesn't give you the highlight moment or the viral announcement. But if it works, if this offensive line actually protects the quarterback, if Barber develops into the player they believe he can be, if Grigson's experience helps Barry navigate the quarterback question and the roster decisions ahead, then this offseason might end up looking a lot smarter than the critics suggested when they were busy writing about pass block win rate percentiles. Training camp is almost here. The answers are coming faster than any of us probably realize. And when they do arrive, everything we've been discussing today is going to start getting tested against reality. The question isn't whether Andrew Barry made perfect moves this offseason. Nobody makes perfect moves. The question is whether the moves he made are pointing this franchise in the right direction. And right now, if you look honestly at both stories from today, the answer to that question is genuinely more encouraging than a lot of the coverage would have you believe. So here's what I want to leave you with, because this is the conversation I actually want to have in the comments section today. The Browns are clearly prioritizing stability and structure over splash and spectacle this offseason. No blockbuster signing, no headline move that shocks the entire league, just methodical, experienced, deliberate roster building paired with a quiet but meaningful front office addition. Do you trust that approach? Do you believe Andrew Barry has earned enough credibility through his work building this roster to deserve the benefit of the doubt on moves like these, even when ESPN analysts are publicly questioning his judgment? Or are you still in wait-and-see mode, holding your trust back until this team actually shows you something on the field? Drop your honest answer below. Tell me where you actually stand. Not where you want to stand, not the optimistic take you give your friends because you don't want to be the negative one in the group. Your real, honest assessment of where this franchise is right now and whether you believe in what Andrew Barry is building. I read every single comment on this channel, and this specific debate is one of the most genuinely interesting conversations happening in the Browns community right now. Don't just watch and leave. Be part of it. If today's breakdown gave you something real to think about, hit that like button before you close out of this video. It helps this channel more than most people realize, and it helps us keep putting out this kind of honest daily coverage without dressing things up to make them sound better or worse than they actually are. And if you want to be here for everything that's coming as training camp approaches, every roster decision, every depth chart development, every story that actually matters for this team's 2025 season, subscribe and come back tomorrow. There is always something new happening with this franchise, and we are going to be right here breaking it down every single day. Go Browns!
If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.